Okay, the first story I want to talk about is Altamira. Altamira announced the first results from drilling at Maria Bonita. This is the first drilling they've done for about a year and a half-ish. Okay, this is a great story where they had money, they drilled, they had very good results in my view, and then they kind of had to hibernate for a while they didn't have much money, but they did stick their neck out, raise some money late last year, and were able to get in, and they've been drilling, and they got some so what I think are very strong results from the first few holes. Okay, so I just realized how small that print is. Let's go to the next slide, and I'll try to talk about it in pictorial form. First of all, the location of this property, this Cajueiro project, it straddles the boundary between Pará State and Mato Grosso State in Brazil. So you can see we're kind of in west central Brazil. It's in an area which has other mines and stuff, other big deposits and discoveries and stuff. So it is an area that I know you can operate. It's also deeply oxidized, deeply weathered, which makes it, metallurgically, I think makes it very favorable. Okay, and already on this property, they have a sizable resource. Okay, they have, I think it's on the order, if you add up the numbers, around 600,000 or 700,000 ounces of resource at Cajueiro in inventory right now. This is even before drilling at Maria Bonita. Okay, let's go to the next site. All right, so where's the resource? It's mainly within that black polygon that you see kind of over here, just off center. That's where the resource area is defined to date. There's room to expand it. There's a lot. This is golden soils, by the way, the colors. There's room to expand that beyond that polygon. There's some targets to the south there, Cajueiro Sul and Sossego. But this Maria Bonita anomaly is the one in the upper left. It's very discrete anomaly, and they've been drilling in the core area of that, and they came up with good results. Let's talk about it more. Let's go to the next slide. This is some geophysics that they did recently. They got some magnetics data that shows there's an area where the magnetism is strongly subdued. It's in blues in this case. And it's in this area that the gold occurs. Okay, the footprint of gold anomalism is shown by that dashed white line. Now, notice most of the drilling they've done is towards the southern end or even outside of the soil, the white polygon there, which is where the bulk of the gold anomalism is. Okay, they're now drilling to the north. Okay, so as they get more data back, they're drilling more and more to the north. Okay, that's very important for a slide I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes. Okay, but you can see here they got some pretty good results. They got 160 meters of 0.4 grams. Within that, 31.2 meters of 0.6 grams. That's in MBA 10 over here towards the left. And then over here, you got hole 13, 139 meters of 0.5 grams, including a 28-meter stretch of 0.9 grams. And then you have hole 15 down there in the lower right, 120 meters, 0.5 grams, includes 39 meters of 0.9 grams. Okay, we're down in the southern margin, and I would say what I'm seeing here reminds me of kind of stuff around the peripheral part of the system. I think more of it's going to be towards the north. Okay, that's just my gut. Okay, so these first holes I think are coming from more of the marginal part of the system, but nonetheless, go to the next slide. They show very similar mineralization. Sorry, this is the table of results. This gives you a breakdown of the assays. Now, one of the things I want to point out here, I know the numbers are kind of hard to see. You might have to go to the press release to read them. In fact, I'm having trouble of seeing them myself. But there's not a huge amount of like high grade driving these long intervals. Okay, it's a snowline type system in many ways. It's a reduced intrusive type system. What do you need to make something like this work in Brazil? Probably about a 0.6, 0.8 gram is my view. Okay, the metallurgy of this thing is fantastic. Brazil is a pretty cheap place to operate. Other mines in this region, like Paracatu, for example, I think has a head grade of under 0.5 grams. Okay, so that doesn't bother me. And the metallurgy, I think, is very favorable here. They've done a lot of test work to show it. But what catches my attention is you're not seeing a lot of high grade drive this. Okay, it's actually driven mostly by long strings of fairly uniform grade, lower grade material. Go to the next slide. And it looks like this. You can see a strong lithologic control to the mineralization. So the colors of the bars on the drill holes, those are different lithologies. So what they've determined is there's certain intrusions in here, i.e. reduced intrusion, that is bringing along the gold, and it's very consistent from hole to hole to hole. This cross section goes east-west, and it's towards the southern end of the target area. If I had to give a vector where the rest of the system, where it's getting better, it's to the north. So think of the other side of the screen, okay? In other words, we're at the southern edge, and as time goes on, we'll see what they get as they go further northward. But they are getting some pretty good grades in local areas, like down here at the bottom of hole 15. There's a higher grade stretch. Look at way down there at the bottom of hole 10. There's a higher grade stretch. These are interesting discoveries, okay? This rock is kind of folded up and buckled up and twisted. It's not as pristine as, say, the Yukon, but it does show the same kind of pattern. Very long strings of fairly uniform grades. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Here's the mineralization. It's when you're in this pink rock, this potassically altered rock, and you see these little white quartz veins, that's where your gold is, okay? And it's like snowline in many, many ways. It's this looks like the kind of rock you'd have it over a tombstone, a tomb, like a gravestone, okay? Now, the pinkness tells me this is a big system. When you see just pervasive flooding like that of alteration through a huge volume of rock, I think we got a big, big system. I'm not worried in the slightest that there's going to be more going here, and we'll see more and probably higher grade values with time. Let's go to the next slide. They actually saw visible gold in little specks, very similar to what we see at Snowline in some of the veining. Okay, very small pinpoints of gold here and there. Go to the next slide. Okay, sorry, that was it. I thought I had one more slide, but anyway, the takeaway there is I think as we get more assays back from the northern part of that target area, I think we're going to see more and more higher grade results. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Sorry. Timberline announced acquisition by McEwen Mining this week. This is an example of what happens. It's a phenomenon that you usually see towards the bottom of a market when it's starting to take off again. Okay, back in 2002, 3, 4, 5, there was just this wave where one company after another was getting gobbled up. And in fact, Rob McEwen was one of the guys that was doing that in Nevada. He was gobbling up little companies and building together a pretty big land position in north central Nevada. Looks like he's ready to do that again here. Okay, now he's picked up Timberline. People have asked me, well, what do you think of this? Yes, it's a heartbreak to think Timberline was trading at 30 cents 2 years ago when they were rocking and rolling. They had drills going and moving and shaking, and now we're selling at a discount to that. But to be frank, this is a good ending for this story. I think it's ended up in good hands. Rob McEwen and his team are smart operators. They're operating their mine at Gold Bar very well lately, and I think they can advance the current resource that they have there at Timberline and get it into production. Add to their production base, but they also have ability to explore over the longer term. So I do think this is a good outcome in light of the current market. Go to the next slide. There's just a few points that I would make about this. One of the smart moves that Timberline made is they fixed the transaction value to a portion of shares of McEwen. So 0.01 of a share of McEwen Mining. So that way, if McEwen Mining goes up or goes down or whatever, Timberline will follow. But it's better than having it like at a dollar value, like a point X dollars or something like this, because if McEwen Mining comes down, if it goes up, you could lose out on some value or whatever. Like that way they track closely and you don't run the risk of losing value, I guess is what I'm saying, in the time that it takes to close the transaction. It is 162% premium, 132 over the 20-day VWAP. That's a pretty good premium, guys. And maybe that's a sign of things to come. Let's hope so. It does give owners of these shares exposure to a producing company now, which is good. It also has a copper component to it. I think that's a good position. McEwen Mining's really set to rock and roll in this new commodity cycle. And McEwen's team can advance the assets, the projects there, especially the existing resource at Timberline into production. Okay, it gives everybody more liquidity, and it also means the company does not have to dilute further, which is probably the biggest risk they faced in the current market. Go to the next slide. Okay, I think this. No, I have two more. Newfound had some good news out of two targets, Honeypot and Honeypot and Jackpot this week. Go to the next slide. Okay, they're way up to the north end on the Appleton Fault Corridor. Both targets are to the east of the Appleton Fault Corridor, and they had some very good assays, much like we've seen out of any of the targets here. Number of holes were close to or just above 100 gram meters. You can see the strike on these things is starting to grow in some cases. It's just more and more pieces to a much bigger puzzle. Okay, go to the next slide. I think the last one I have today is Puma, and I apologize, I've gone past 2:00, but here we are. Anyway, Puma put news out today, or this week I should say, about drilling to the northeast of the link zone. Okay, so they define now a corridor, and I actually like this approach because now it gives a higher assurance that there is a much bigger gold system here. They've been drilling in the link zone for the past year or two with good success, but now they have holes up in the Tiger Zone, Cheetah, and the Cheetah Zone B, way up in the northeast. They've defined basically a 4-kilometer corridor now of what are probably going to be high-grade veins. What they're trying to say in this news release, they see veining. The white bits in those core photos is the veining. That's very similar to what they saw down at Lynx. So we should expect good assays, hopefully, out of some of those holes. And this really does start to tell you that this fault corridor, just like Newfound, this is a big gold system that has some strike to it. I do hope this is one story that will turn around with this gold market. This is one I feel very fondly of, and I just love to see it succeed.